Amidst the hospital chaos, a touching whisper exposed an incredible daddy-daughter bond uncovered. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh sheen on everything they touched. Daniel paced the sterile linoleum floor of the hospital, his heart racing, a cacophony of beeping machines surrounding him. Lily's tiny form lay motionless on the bed, her pale face framed by spirals of golden curls. A rare condition, the doctors had said, something that put her in more peril than he could bear to comprehend. The moment he had received the call from the daycare, his worst nightmare had transitioned into reality. He could almost hear the ticking seconds of his life countdown in the silence that enveloped them. This was a fight for her life, and he was lost amidst the overwhelming uncertainty of the healthcare system. How was he supposed to navigate this chaos and advocate for his daughter? Each decision felt like an insurmountable task. The burden of responsibility sat heavy on his shoulders, every choice he considered seemed to threaten her fragile state. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Amid the clinical coldness, Daniel felt the warmth of despair setting in. A senior doctor, with frayed patience and a clipped tongue, questioned his competence, labeling him merely a concerned father who lacked the experience to challenge established protocols. In that moment, doubt invaded his mind like a creeping shadow. What authority did he even possess? The thought twisted deep in his gut, the pressure mounting. What if his love wasn't enough? What if he missed something crucial in the whirlwind of medical terminology and rushing footsteps? His hands shook slightly as he remained close to Lily, his thoughts spiraling into an abyss. Who was he to defy the system? The weight of financial strain bore down on him. Sending Lily to a specialist would mean accruing debt they could ill afford. He could hear the whispers of those in town, how they looked down upon those who couldn't make ends meet, no matter how hard they tried. But clinging to Lily's hand, he felt the flicker of hope. The memory of her laughter echoed in his mind, the times she dragged him to play in the park, blissfully unaware of any struggle, just basking in their adventures. She was his son, and he would do anything to ensure she shone brightly. Her absence felt like a wound, and the thought of losing her sent him spiraling deeper into despair. As moments blended into the sterile white walls of the hospital, Daniel wrestled with the impossible dilemma. Accept mediocrity and resignation, or push harder against the suffocating rules that held them captive. Just then, Lily's voice broke through the enveloping darkness. A whisper of "Daddy, I'm scared," wrapped around his heart and squeezed tightly. He looked into her fearful eyes, the unconditional love they shared ignited a deep resolve. But the mountains of obstacles loomed larger than ever, and the question remained, could a father's love truly conquer the crushing weight of an indifferent world? As he prepared for the fight ahead, the fear clawed at his insides, a monstrous reality that refused to let go. Daniel stood at the precipice of an irrevocable decision, the stakes too high, determined to find the strength buried deep within him if only he could discover the real power of a father's love amidst the chaos. The doctor's footsteps echoed down the hall, each step a reminder of the relentless pressure Daniel felt. Instinctively, he clenched Lily's hand tighter, anchoring himself in the reality of her frail existence. She needed him more than ever. They had shared a beautiful world together, and now it teetered on the brink of collapse. In that moment, Daniel recognized the critical shift forming within him. Doubt was a powerful adversary, but so was the fierce love he felt for his daughter. He had always considered himself an ordinary man focused on providing for his family, holding down a job, making sure there were groceries in the fridge. But the enormity of this crisis sparked a new awareness he had never tapped into before. Instead of surrendering to that dread-filled uncertainty, he began assessing his surroundings with a newfound clarity. The sterile, harsh reality of the hospital stripped away the trivialities of everyday life, revealing the essence, the stark realization that this was his chance to protect his daughter with everything he had. This was not just about love, it was about fighting the system, demanding answers, and advocating for her well-being. As the doctor entered the room, Daniel's heart raced. He straightened his posture and forced himself to meet the staff's questioning gaze. The nervous tremor in his hands steadied as he processed the information swirling in his mind. "Please," he interrupted, his voice more confident than he felt. "What exactly is Lily's condition? I need specifics. I need to know everything." The doctor paused, surprised by the intensity of Daniel's request. "It's a rare autoimmune disorder, and we're monitoring her closely. But we need to be careful about the treatments." "Careful?" Daniel echoed, instinctive anger flaring. "What does that even mean? How can we make informed decisions if we don't fully understand the risks and the potential options?" He felt adrift but ready to confront the shadows cast by this reality, a slew of questions pouring forth as he discussed potential referrals, treatment plans, and alternative routes. With each question he fired, a vein of determination pulsed deeper within him. The doctor's responses morphed from dismissive to engaged, they began to establish a tentative partnership. With Lily's face in his thoughts and her uncertain future as a compass, he carved out space for hope amidst harsh realities. Hours melted into discussions of specialists, therapy options, and financial implications. Enthralled by the boundaries he was pushing, Daniel felt a shift within himself. The mundane life he had led transformed into an exhilarating quest for knowledge and agency. The weight of responsibility still loomed, casting shadows across his mind, but these were no longer burdens, rather, opportunities to stand tall for Lily. He recognized that while the stakes were high, his love was a catalyst for growth. The knowledge he sought was empowering. He could advocate fiercely, demand answers, insist on dignity for both himself and his child. He left that night exhausted yet electrified, the chaos of the hospital now a backdrop for awakening. As he returned to his car, he touched the small teddy bear they had brought for Lily, picturing her vibrant smile. But beyond the doors of the hospital, a new fear crept in. How far was he willing to go? The stakes felt insurmountable. What if he overstepped, alienating those he needed to rely on? A new battle loomed, one that would test not only his resolve but also the emerging strength of his fatherly identity. Daniel drove home, grappling with his dual nature, the father yearning to protect and the man gaining the courage to fight back. Tomorrow beckoned, and it would bring with it decisions that could ripple through their lives. As the car slid into the driveway, determination etched across his brow, the shadows danced around him. The looming challenge would be the true test of a father's love. Could he harness both the heart and the strength of a protector in this unforgiving world? The surreal journey was only beginning, but he would not shy away. Tomorrow, he would have to confront the authority, demanding he be heard, but could he bear the weight of opposition? The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, lighting the way for Daniel as he prepared to face another daunting day. A tangle of emotions twisted in his gut, spurred by uncertainty and a wave of determination. Each pour of coffee was deliberate, each sip steadying his nerves. As the dark liquid coursed through him, his mind jockeyed between thoughts of Lily and the looming confrontation with the hospital staff. He had spent hours deliberating the specifics he would demand, practicing his opening lines in the mirror, visualizing the scene he'd face. Would they engage him or dismiss his concerns? Daniel felt a flicker of doubt, clashing with the resolve that had blossomed in him. This was not just about his daughter's treatment but his rebirth as her advocate. The transformation was palpable, but could it withstand the pressure? After gathering himself, he grabbed his bag, the teddy bear nestled within a corner. It felt like a talisman now, imbued with the hopes they shared. As he walked to the hospital, there was no turning back. He envisioned himself as an impenetrable wall, guarding Lily against the unknown. Upon entering the hospital, the familiar scent of antiseptic overwhelmed him, but there was also a new scent, courage layered under desperation. He checked in at the front desk, the receptionist's bored tone contrasting sharply with the frantic beat of his heart. "I would like to speak with Dr. Smith. It's urgent." Awaiting her arrival, Daniel's thoughts spiraled. Could he truly convey how pivotal this day was, not just for Lily but for his own identity? He felt the echoes of self-doubt creeping in again, but he shook his head. No more self-pity, he had a mission. When Dr. Smith finally approached, the expression on her face oscillated between professional detachment and slight surprise at his presence. "Mr. Johnson, how can I assist you today?" she asked. He drew a breath, shifting the weight of his resolve onto his shoulders. "I need to talk about Lily's treatment plan. We need clarity, specific options. I feel like I'm in the dark here, and I refuse to just stand by." Her eyes narrowed slightly, recognition of his newfound intensity flickering in her expression. "I understand. Autoimmune disorders can be challenging, but our priority is her safety. Safety is important, but so is understanding the options available to us. I want to advocate for her, and I need to know everything I can." His voice cracked slightly, revealing the rawness beneath the surface. The nurse who had been present shifted uncomfortably, but Dr. Smith held his gaze, gauging the gravity of his words. As they delved deeper into the specifics of potential treatments, Daniel felt his anxiety morphing into something akin to empowerment. He realized he was no longer quite the same man who had walked into the building that morning. With every piece of information, he grew not only as an advocate for Lily but as a defender of their bond, reinforcing the love that had ignited this change within him. However, a gnawing tension lingered in the back of his mind. The question of how far he was willing to go still hovered, waiting to erupt. If he pushed too hard, might he draw a backlash not just from the hospital staff but perhaps even within his family? The stakes of his journey intensified, placing him on an uncertain path. Suddenly, another voice cut through the haze, a concerned but firm tone arriving from a shadowed corner of the room. "Mr. Johnson," it said, drawing his attention. "I think we need to have a more serious discussion about your daughter's needs." The office door swung open, revealing another doctor he didn't recognize. The confidence Daniel had built began to tremble once again. Could this be another barrier he had to breach, another opportunity to flex the newfound prowess he felt growing within him? Or was he stepping into a quagmire that could cost him even more? The moment hung suspended in the air, waiting for him to respond. Daniel's mind raced as he turned to face the newcomer. The doctor wore a crisp white coat, but it was the sternness in her expression that set his pulse quickening. This was not a simple interruption, it was a challenge to his resolve, a test he wasn't sure he wanted to take on. "Dr. Roberts," the woman introduced herself, extending her hand. "I've been reviewing Lily's case, and I think we need to explore some of the more advanced treatment options available. However, I need to understand your level of commitment to these processes." It felt as though a weight had been placed on his chest. Commitment. The word hung heavy in the air, amplifying the fear that had quietly nestled itself back into the crevices of his mind. Daniel's instinct was to pull back, to question what it meant, to wonder whether his current strength could weather the burden of expectation. He inhaled, forcing himself to focus on Lily, on the small, fierce spirit that had started this journey for him. "We want the best for her. I'm ready for whatever it takes," he stated, though the fervor in his voice didn't completely mask the tremor of uncertainty lurking beneath. Dr. Roberts' demeanor softened, just a fraction. "Good. We need an advocate like you." As they discussed options, experimental treatments, potential side effects, financial implications, Daniel took note of every detail, recalibrating his mental map of the situation. Each pulse of information transformed the fog of uncertainty into an acute awareness of his daughter's needs, igniting a fierce purpose within him. But even as he grappled with this burgeoning confidence, there loomed the specter of family turmoil. Would his wife agree with his decisions? What if this journey led him down a path that left her feeling sidelined? Doubts clawed at the edges of his fortified resolve, shifting his emotions like a tempest just beneath the surface. "Mr. Johnson," Dr. Roberts interjected firmly, drawing him back into the present. "I need you to know that these options are not without risk. Are you prepared for that?" Her probing gaze caught him off guard, forcing him to confront the darker aspects of his advocacy. How many parents would willingly tread into perilous waters if it meant saving their child? What if it's too much? He pondered silently, wrestling with an inner moral compass still finding its bearings. He forced a nod in Dr. Roberts' direction, though his throat felt constricted. "I have to do what's best for Lily," he replied, each word wrapped in an introspective urgency. In seeking deeper understanding, he was not only fighting for his daughter but also grappling with his newfound identity as her protector. As the conversation continued, Daniel discovered that he was not merely advocating for Lily, he was also illuminating the path for himself. Step by step, he was peeling away layers of self-doubt, revealing a determination that had always simmered beneath. With final notes exchanged, Dr. Roberts offered, "We can set up a consultation to discuss these options more thoroughly. Jessie, the nurse, will help coordinate everything." Daniel watched her leave, feeling empowered yet anxious. Where would these decisions lead? What ripple effects would this choice generate within his family dynamic? As he collected his thoughts, he realized the stakes had risen significantly. Was he ready to confront the subsequent challenges that may unfold? What if it meant facing his wife's apprehensions or the potential isolation of his choices? But what frightened him most was the thought of stepping back into their home without a fortified plan, without the clarity he sought. A sudden realization washed over him: this journey was more than advocating for treatment, it was about discovering who he truly was and what he was willing to sacrifice for his daughter's future. Daniel glanced at the door where Dr. Roberts had exited, a fierce resolve washing over him. The path ahead was ruthless, filled with uncertainty and possibly opposition, yet it was also teeming with possibility. Drawing a final deep breath, he understood that the true conversation was just beginning, not just with the doctors, but with himself. But could he maintain this momentum, pushing past his own limits while ensuring that he held on to the essence of his family's unity? The next confrontation loomed on the horizon, and nothing felt certain. Just then, a thought pierced through the haze of self-reflection: this next decision would not just redefine his role as Lily's father but could also force him to challenge the very foundation of his family's relationships. How far was he willing to go to protect that bond? Daniel stepped out of the sterile, fluorescent-lit confines of the consultation room, the weight of his decisions hanging heavily over him. Each step toward the elevator felt like wading through murky water, thick with uncertainty and the remnants of his fear. But beneath that thick veneer, something incandescent began to flicker: a determination to advocate for Lily no matter the cost. The corridors of the hospital buzzed around him, nurses rushed past and families murmured anxiously in waiting areas. The familiar sensations enveloped him, blending the clinical with the personal. He felt a pang in his stomach, an instinctual reminder of the impending conversation with his wife, Sarah. How would he communicate this newfound resolve? Would she feel his passion or only see his stubbornness? With every labored breath, he reminded himself of his purpose. He pulled out his phone and sent a few quick messages to Dr. Roberts, mapping out potential meeting times to dive deeper into the proposed treatments. Initiating this dialogue was crucial, but so was the dialogue back home. Entering the elevator, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the polished steel. It was a stark reminder of the internal transformation he navigated. Who was this man staring back at him, more resolute than ever? This wasn't just about making choices anymore, it was about constructing an identity rooted in courage and commitment. Yet, an underlying dread lingered: would Sarah support him? As the elevator doors opened and released him into the expansive lobby, memories of previous family conversations flickered in his mind. Their normalcy, the laughter shared over mundane daily events, it all felt so fragile now. Would his wife embrace the idea of advanced treatments, or would she recoil from the complexity of what lay ahead? His chest tightened at the thought. With his heart racing, he stepped outside, the sun warming his face, as if nature were giving him a push. He navigated toward the nearby park where he often found solace. Just as he crossed the patch of grass where they usually played with Lily, he recalled the wistful laughter of his daughter in that same spot. The memory centered him and strengthened his resolve. As he settled onto a bench, his mind danced with strategies. How do you convince someone you love that a tumultuous, uncertain path is the right one? The fear of rejection gnawed at him. He was ready to explore the depths of medical options for their daughter, but would that intensity drive a wedge between him and Sarah? With each thought, a realization began to emerge: he had to be honest. Not just in the details of the treatments, but in how each decision impacted them as parents. It was time to share his fears and aspirations with her, to let her into his transformative journey rather than shielding her from it. The sun dipped lower in the sky, and Daniel noticed the golden hues of an orange sunset gracing the horizon. He inhaled deeply, feeling rejuvenated, and imagined the conversation to come. Clarity surged through him. He needed to frame the discussion not just around Lily's health, but around their family's future, navigating this together. As he rose to leave, a new wave of anxiety washed over him. Would his revelation strengthen their bond, or would it taint their already delicate equilibrium? The dichotomy terrified him, but it dawned upon him that embracing vulnerability might just open the door to deeper connection. He headed home, resolved yet apprehensive, prepared to confront not just Sarah's feelings but also his own hesitation. The decision to act was only the first step. Now he faced the true relationship test that would lay bare the dynamics of their marriage. What awaited him behind that front door ignited a visceral urge within him, a burning need to communicate honestly, while fearing what truths might unfold. It was time to confront not just his wife, but the uncharted territory of their shared fears, united in the face of adversity. As he slid the key into the lock, Daniel knew, the moment of confrontation would either fortify their family bonds or unravel them. There could be no turning back now, only the courage to face whatever awaited him. As Daniel stepped through the threshold of their home, he was instantly enveloped by the comforting aroma of the dinner Sarah was preparing. It was routine, a choreography they had perfected over the years, yet it suddenly felt more poignant against the backdrop of his emotional turmoil. He paused to steady himself, inhaling the warmth of the moment while mentally bracing for the cascade of truths he was about to share. Sarah's voice floated in from the kitchen, bright and unsuspecting. "Daniel. You made it home just in time. I'm trying a new recipe tonight, something special." His heart raced. Here she was, encapsulated in domestic bliss, completely unaware of the storm brewing within him. "Sounds great," he replied, forcing a smile as he walked down the hallway. He could hear the faint sound of Lily babbling excitedly in her room, and despite his turmoil, warmth spread through him. His daughter's innocence was a stark contrast to the gravity of his impending discussion. "Let me wash my hands," he called out, needing just a few moments to collect his thoughts before plunging into the depth of the conversation. He stepped into the bathroom, staring into the mirror, revisiting the man he had seen in the elevator earlier. Determination welled within him. It was now or never. After a quick wash, he joined Sarah in the kitchen, her back turned to him as she stirred a pot. His resolve solidified with every step he took. "Sarah," he began, the word hanging in the air, but was swallowed by the clatter of pots. "Can we talk for a minute?" His voice trembled slightly, the weight of it catching her attention. She turned, her expression shifting from playful anticipation to concern. "Of course. Is everything okay?" He took a deep breath, harnessing every ounce of clarity he had cultivated in the park. This was not just about a medical decision, it was about them, their daughter, and the future they were desperately trying to shape. "I had a meeting with Dr. Roberts today," he offered, watching the subtle change in her demeanor. "About Lily?" Sarah asked, her eyes narrowing with apprehension. "Yes," he continued, "he outlined some treatment options that could be higher risk, but with potentially better outcomes." Each word felt heavy, pressing against both their emotions. He could see Sarah's brow furrow as she processed his statements. "Higher risk? What does that mean?" Her tone grew serious, and he knew she sensed the gravity of what he was presenting. "I believe they could offer her a chance to thrive rather than just survive. We need to consider it seriously." A silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating. He watched as myriad emotions danced across her face: confusion, fear, and an inkling of hope. His stomach nodded. For a moment, he feared he had pushed too far. Daniel, she finally said, her voice steadier than he expected, I want what's best for Lily, but what about the risks? What if we have to weigh those against what we have now? He interjected, the urgency in his voice raw. I can't sit back and accept limitations without at least exploring every possible option for our little girl. His outburst hung in the air, charged with the fervor of a harried parent seeking answers. Sarah faltered, staring at him with wide, glistening eyes. The stark reality of his emotions crumbled the facade of normalcy they had tried so hard to maintain. Do you think this will make it easier for us? You can't just throw yourself into treatments without discussing it together. He closed the gap between them, wrestling with the weight of his own fear. I'm scared too, Sarah. Scared that we won't try everything we can and that we might lose her without knowing what was possible. In that moment, they both were exposed, raw and vulnerable. This was not just about Lily, but also about confronting their greatest fears as parents, revealing how their hopes and anxieties intertwined like vines. As the tension in the room began to ebb, he felt a shift and need to bridge the distance between their perspectives. They needed to confront this together, or risk drifting further apart. Let's dive into the details, he suggested, his voice softened, inviting. We can do this together. The resolve in Daniel's voice ignited a flicker of hope in Sarah's eyes, but it was still fleeting. Okay, she whispered, her expression caught between acceptance and lingering doubt. While they embarked on this path together, the weight of the conversation hung heavily, but it also began to lay a foundation for a deeper alliance. What was required next was navigating the complexities ahead, not just in discussing treatments but in bridging their hearts once more amidst a backdrop of uncertainty. As night descended outside, Daniel understood, the real work had just begun, revealing whether they could transcend their fears or if the harsh truth of their reality would sever their bonds completely. He could sense the contours of a battle brewing, not just for their daughter's future, but for their own unity as a couple. Little did he know, a decision awaited them that might challenge everything they believed about courage and love. In the days that followed, Daniel immersed himself in research, becoming an ardent student of the medical jargon that had once danced elusively beyond his grasp. Each evening, after tucking Lily into bed, he would retreat to the living room, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating a sea of scattered papers and open books. He was methodical, dissecting treatment options, measuring risks against the promise of hope like an accountant weighing fortunes in a balance sheet. Despite the late nights and the flood of information, there was an unexpected clarity developing within him. The more he learned about potential therapies, the more he recognized the fabric of possibility intertwined with the fear that had swathed his heart in darkness. He began to see their circumstances not as a relentless storm, but as a challenge to push through, a crucible through which he and Sarah could emerge renewed and united. One evening, he found himself sitting on the couch, staring at a proposal that outlined a series of experimental treatments. An array of emotions bubbled up, igniting the fire of ambition and resolve within him. He felt a surge of strength coursing through his veins, the kind that beckoned him to not just consider the future for his daughter, but to also redefine his own identity in the face of adversity. He was no longer just a father faced with insurmountable odds, he was a warrior for Lily's life, ready to forge a new path. Daniel? Sarah's voice broke through the silence like a soothing balm, and he looked up to see her standing in the doorway, hesitant but intrigued. You look determined. I am, he replied with newfound confidence. I've been thinking a lot about our options and what they mean for us as a family. We can make this work, Sarah. But we need to be on the same page. As she approached, he noticed the flicker of doubt in her eyes hadn't completely subsided. It became apparent that while he was gathering strength from information, she was still grappling with her own fears. He understood now that his resolve could help light a way for both of them, but it could not shield her from her uncertainties. I'm so scared, Danny, she confessed, her voice trembling. What if this doesn't work? What if we lose her before we even get the chance to try? Her words struck him like a thunderclap, echoing the silent questions that had lodged within him. It was a moment of vulnerability that shattered the walls he hadn't even realized he had built around himself. He didn't have all the answers, but he could extend the connection that had begun to forge between them through shared fears and aspirations. What if we gain something? Daniel countered, a fresh determination buoying his spirit. Together, let us visualize the possibilities. What if this opens up doors for her we never even dreamed of? This is about her, about us, and I refuse to let fear dictate our choices. I want to believe that, she replied, gratitude intermingling with her fear. Her gaze softened, and the tension began to morph into something more palpable, a shared hope. It was as though they had both stepped onto a precipice, each silently questioning how far they were willing to leap into the unknown together. Over the following week, they met with Dr. Roberts again, shifting the atmosphere from one of apprehension to proactive engagement. As they discussed the details of the treatments, Daniel felt his pulse quicken with an exhilarating sense of purpose. Each answer he provided to Sarah's probing questions felt like a promise, not only to Lily but to themselves, a commitment to navigate the tumult of their emotions without losing sight of what they stood for as a family. But as their resolve solidified, he found a trepidation creeping back into his heart, tipping the balance of hope and fear anew. What if this was a fragile turning point, poised to crack under the weight of harsh reality? Craving clarity, he found solace in his nightly conversations with Lily, whose laughter filled his world with brightness, igniting a blaze of conviction within him. One evening, as he nestled beside her in her room, watching her drift into dreams, a thought struck him: what does courage truly mean in the face of the unknown? It was a question that resonated deeply as he pondered his own transformation throughout these challenges. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of their decision loomed larger, threatening to evolve into an ultimatum that would redefine their family. And just when he thought he had grasped the contours of courage, a call from the hospital would plunge them into chaos again, shaking their foundations yet again. "Daniel, it's time to face the truth," a voice would say, bringing with it an unanticipated revelation that would challenge not just their plans, but the very tenets of their bond as a family. The ringing of the phone shattered the silence like a thunderclap, and Daniel's heart raced as he stared at the screen. An unfamiliar number blinked back at him, twisting the pit of his stomach into knots. It felt as though the weight of the world hung in the balance. "Just breathe," he whispered to himself, trying to anchor his spiraling thoughts. He answered with a voice steadier than he felt. "Hello. Mr. Davis," a clipped voice greeted him. "We have new updates regarding your daughter's case. Please come to the hospital as soon as you can." The abruptness pushed him into a spiral of anxiety, cutting through the resolve he had painstakingly built over the past weeks. It commanded his attention, reshaping his immediate reality. He took a moment to collect himself before hanging up and turning to find Sarah, eyes wide and worried, fixated on him. "It's the hospital," he said, his tone subdued despite the urgency of the news. "They want us to come in. There's an update on Lily's condition." Without needing to say more, they both felt the weight of the moment settle over them, overshadowing the hope they had begun foster. The car ride to the hospital unfolded in heavy silence, punctuated only by the muffled sounds of the city as they passed, each street a reminder of a normal life that felt increasingly distant. Daniel's thoughts rattled between what might await them. He felt the ground beneath him shift as dread draped its heavy cloak over his resolve. Yet, buried beneath that fear was a conviction that had grown in tandem with his daughter's plight. He remembered the words he had shared with Sarah about possibility, and he clung to that glimmer amid the uncertainty. Once inside the hospital, they moved through the maze of brightly lit corridors, each step echoing with urgency and anticipation. Daniel felt a bizarre familiarity wrap around him. This was not the first time they had navigated these halls, but it also felt alien, a place he hoped never to claim as his second home. They finally arrived at the pediatric oncology unit where they found Dr. Roberts waiting, her expression somber. As she briefed them on the latest developments, Daniel could hear his own heartbeat reverberating in his ears, punctuating her words with a steady thrum of dread. The news was not the miraculous update he had dared to hope for, it was more of a reality check. "Lily's tests show a significant change," Dr. Roberts began gently. However, we will need to discuss the possibility of adjusting her treatment plan based on the latest results. We've encountered some unexpected complications. Daniel felt the floor tilt beneath him, a chasm of anxiety opening wide. Complexity and uncertainty danced in his mind, wrapping around his aspirations, entwining around his heart like a tight knot. But amidst the storm, he fixated on Sarah's hand resting on his arm, a tether, a bond they shared that would ground him through the chaos. "Are you saying there's no more hope?" he interjected, before the doctor could go further. The words tasted bitter but necessary, surfacing the undercurrents of fear that threatened to drown him. He needed clarity, something he could grasp onto with both hands. "No, not at all," she replied quickly, yet there was a seriousness in her tone. "But we must be prepared for the fact that every choice we make carries risks. We have options, but they require us to be brave." Her eyes turned serious, and Daniel recognized that this was not mere jargon, it was a challenge directed at the heart of his resolve. With a deep breath, he leaned back, the tension in his shoulders coiling tighter yet. It wasn't only Lily's future that hung in the balance, but their entire family's very foundation. Bravery demands clarity, he thought, wrestling with the conflicting emotions that surged within him. They had to decide together, as a family, what bravery would look like moving forward. It was a moment of reckoning illuminated by the flickering lights of uncertainty. After discussing the treatment options, Daniel felt a burdensome weight lift, if only slightly. Each possibility felt like a stepping stone rather than a dead end. They weren't without risk, but they carved out space for hope as well. Yet, a nagging thought, one that had remained elusive, bubbled up within him. What if we could give something back, something positive for the other children here? He wondered fleetingly. After all, they shared this struggle, the pain and fear confronted by parents echoing within the walls. As they left the office, Sarah's anxious gaze met his, and they exchanged a silent understanding. They were navigating treacherous waters together, holding each other up amid the uncertainty. And as Daniel crossed the threshold into the waiting area, his heart a bit lighter but still heavy, he noticed a young girl drawing a colorful picture in crayons. The sight ignited something within him, a stirring sense of purpose and connection he had not anticipated. Maybe it's time to turn our fears into action, he mused, imagining possibilities that reached beyond their immediate needs. But just as he began to formulate a plan, the voice of a hospital staff member called out ominously, "Daniel, we need to talk about another matter regarding your daughter." His breath hitched. Could this be the critical juncture that would redefine everything? Daniel stood frozen for a moment, the hospital's sterile atmosphere closing in on him. His mind raced with 1,000 questions, each more daunting than the last. The words "another matter" echoed in his ears, a foreboding bell tolling in the distance. He exchanged a glance with Sarah, her face a canvas of concern painted with uncertainties. "Shall we?" he asked, both to her and himself, breaking through the haze of dread that threatened to engulf him. He steeled his resolve, taking the first step toward the unknown. The staff member led them down another corridor, the fluorescent lights casting sharp shadows that echoed the turmoil inside him. As they entered a small consultation room, a wave of formal emotion washed over him. It felt detached, clinical. He sat across from a social worker and the same nurse who had been so kind during their prior visits. He searched their faces, looking for cues, wishing for any sign of comfort or familiarity. They seemed prepared, and it unnerved him. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. and Mrs. Davis," the social worker began, her voice measured yet sympathetic. "We wanted to discuss some support options for families like yours who are navigating the complexities of pediatric cancer care." Daniel felt a flicker of irritation at the unsolicited offer. Did they think they understood their struggle? He grasped for composure. "Our focus right now is Lily's treatment," he countered sharply, frustration thrumming at the edges of his control. The nurse's gentle interjection broke through his defenses. "We understand that, and we're here to help in any way possible." She leaned forward, eyes earnest. "Support doesn't diminish your focus on Lily. It can empower your entire family. Daniel took a breath, nudging aside the irritation that threatened to flare. Perhaps there was merit in what they were offering. Beneath it all, he felt a different kind of tug, a whisper of vulnerability that flickered like a candle in the swirling darkness. What kind of support? Sarah asked, her tone cautious yet inquisitive. The room felt inflated with possibilities, each word carefully laid stone by stone. The social worker slid a brochure across the table, detailing a range of workshops and support groups. These sessions help families share experiences, coping strategies, and even moments of joy amidst the struggle, she said, her tone drawing them in. You're not alone in this. As he looked at the brochure, he could practically hear the desperation in the children's laughter, catching glimpses of fleeting normalcy amidst the chaos. His thoughts veered toward the young girl he had seen drawing. The way her eyes sparkled made him realize that perhaps connection could also stand at the crossroads of pain and healing. What if, Daniel said tentatively, what if we also contribute? Perhaps we could organize something for the kids, an art day, to channel their emotions into creating. The air in the room shifted, filled with a sense of burgeoning excitement. Sarah's face illuminated with a mix of surprise and admiration. That could be really special, she said, her eyes sparkling with newfound hope. The realization hit him, a spark igniting in his chest that beckoned to be nurtured. He wasn't just a passive participant in this ordeal, he could be an active force, a catalyst for joy even if fleeting, a way to honor Lily and others battling their own demons. As they discussed ideas, enthusiasm bubbling up where despair had threatened, Daniel felt unshackled from his own anxiety. This engagement was not about diminishing Lily's experience but expanding it, creating a tapestry of connections threading through shared pain. And yet, a part of him remained tethered to the earlier conversation, the heavy weight of that other matter lurking ominously in the shadows. What could it mean for them? As they rose to leave, armed with new plans and creativity, Daniel's heart raced with the thrill of new beginnings, but the echo of uncertainty lingered. Daniel? The nurse's voice cut through the air, halting him in his tracks. We still need to address the potential risks related to Lily's situation. The words settled over him like an impending storm. The moment of truth approached, looming larger than life, and he took a deep breath, bracing for the inevitable collision between hope and the reality they faced. Daniel stood in the small hospital corridor, a storm of emotions swirling within him. The new developments concerning Lily's treatment loomed over him like a dark cloud, heavy with uncertainty. Just days earlier, he had felt a flicker of purpose as he mapped out ways to advocate fiercely for his daughter, and now that fire felt ignited but threatened by the sense of impending doom. Would all these newfound strategies and support networks slip away before they could even take root? Sarah stood beside him, he could feel her tension radiating, an electric current of fear passing between them. They had begun imagining a future filled with hope, and yet, the medical team seemed determined to tether them back to the harshness of reality. Taking a deep breath, he gathered his resolve. Let us hear them out, he said, his voice steady but tinged with the urgency of the moment. They followed the nurse into the designated meeting room, a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos outside. There was a table filled with papers, but more importantly, it was a space charged with the potential to reshape their understanding of Lily's evolving situation. Dr. Roberts entered, her face set with a gravity that increased the weight of Daniel's heart. I appreciate your willingness to meet on short notice, she began, her voice taking on a solemn tone. We need to discuss the latest scans and their implications for Lily's treatment. As she spoke, pain twisted in his gut, manifesting with every term she mentioned: risk, uncertainty, complications. The prognosis she painted was not evolving as they had hoped, instead, it was fraught with challenges that could overshadow any glimmer of optimism. What had begun as discussions around treatment options had spiraled into conversations riddled with grim statistics and daunting choices. Daniel's hands clenched into fists as fear seeped into his resolve, clouding his mind with doubt. How could they keep moving forward? Was he truly prepared to shoulder the emotional burden of their decisions? What is the next step? Sarah asked, her voice surprisingly steady, showcasing a strength that Daniel admired deeply. If we choose to proceed, what are our chances? Dr. Roberts hesitated before answering, a moment too long to undo the trepidation rolling over both Daniel and Sarah. Every decision holds weight. Advanced treatments, yes, they offer the potential for remarkable outcomes, but they also come with significant risk. These treatments, while innovative, hold no guaranteed results. It's an unknown path. Daniel felt the air thicken with uncertainty. The conversation had transformed from a shared hope with his wife to a challenging dilemma that could tear at their very fabric as a family. But then, as if the universe was tossing him a lifeline, a thought floated to the surface of his consciousness. The young girl he had seen drawing, her vibrant creativity reminding him of the beauty amidst chaos. What if they took control of their fate? What if they championed a different kind of journey, one that didn't solely rely on the medical staff? What if, Daniel interjected, the seed of his newfound mission finding voice, we could create a program for the kids here, to give them a voice? To transform this entire experience into something empowering for Lily and all the other children? This could shift the narrative towards resilience rather than simply surviving the ordeal. The words hung in the air, charged with urgency. It could be their unifying force. It could serve not just as ventilation for their own fears but also as a legacy of emotional strength for the children who needed it most. Sarah's eyes widened, and he could see awareness light her features, transforming the shadow of doubt into the spark of hope. You mean a creative outlet, a workshop? Art therapy? Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of their shared fears begin to pull back slightly. It could help empower the kids to express themselves, to find healing through creativity. We could organize art sessions, where they can share their stories and find solace in togetherness. It could be a choice that isn't dictated by fear, something they can control. Dr. Roberts' expression softened, surprised by the spirit of defiance emerging from the depths of despair. It's ambitious, but fostering an area of support that allows the children to connect is invaluable. It may even alleviate some of the anxiety they carry. In that moment, Daniel realized, this was the true essence of transformation. Not merely advocating for a treatment plan, but creating a space where community and connection thrived within the walls of adversity. They weren't just patients, they were a family choosing to embrace possibility, cultivating resilience. The next days were filled with planning sessions, discussions with staff on how to initiate this project, and meetings with other families. Together, Daniel and Sarah crafted the framework for what would be the most meaningful venture of their lives, nourishing both their hearts and the spirits of the children around them. When they finally launched the Art Against Adversity workshop, they were met with unexpected enthusiasm. The walls of the hospital transformed into an explosion of color and laughter, echoing with the vibrant energy of children reclaiming their narratives. As Lily's smiling face was painted alongside others, every laugh became a defiance of despair. Daniel and Sarah watched as their daughter stood strong, embodying the resilience they had instilled together, bound by purpose and love. By the end of that day, amidst the chaos of colored paint and giggles, Daniel felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. This endeavor was not just about Lily fighting against a rare condition, it was about breaking the chains of hopelessness and forging a new identity as advocates for joy and connection. In facing uncertainty with courage, they had become more than just parents, they were warriors, entwined in each other's strength and light as they navigated the waves of challenges presented by life and family. Daniel might have faced the unthinkable before, but now he stood taller, anchored by his daughter's laughter and the community they had formed. As they exited the hospital that evening, Sarah's hand intertwined with his, Daniel knew without a doubt they had achieved something essential. They had turned the shadows of fear into the joy of creation. Daniel now understood that the true power of love was not only in protecting but in crafting hope and connection from the depths of vulnerability. Their journey was far from over, but armed with partnership and purpose, they were now ready to face whatever came next, unequivocally unified and transformed. And as they gazed ahead into the setting sun, Daniel confirmed one last realization: being a father extended beyond blood, it enveloped love, advocacy, and the fierce determination to shine, a lesson they would carry with them in the battle ahead. In that moment, he recognized that he had indeed conquered the challenge that had forced him to grow. He had emerged as not just a father, but a champion of hope. For those still yearning to chase their passions amid storms, join Daniel's journey. Embrace your struggles and forge connections, because your story is waiting to be told. Stand steadfast as your own advocate. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.